Hello, Facebook friends, YouTube subscribers. How are y'all doing today? This is my review for Spider-Man: Homecoming. Liz, mom, and I went and saw it about a week, 2 weeks ago, and it was good. It kind of took place after Captain America: Civil War, which introduced Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Of course, Robert Downey Jr. revises his role as Iron Man, Tony Stark. Marissa Tomei is Aunt May. If you haven't seen her, she's been in some well-known films. What I remember her from is My Cousin Vinny, and some few other films. Also, Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton is the Vulture. And if you don't know who Michael Keaton is, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, Michael Keaton is an icon in the comic book world. He played the Batman and Bruce Wayne in Batman in 1989 and Batman Returns in 1992. To me, he is Batman. I'm always going to be partial to Michael Keaton's Batman and Tim Burton's version of Batman. Christian Bale did a good job, but that's what Michael Keaton's known for, is Batman. But he plays the Vulture in this film. And of course, you've got, make sure I'm getting all the introduces as Zendaya is MJ, one of his friends. And let me think if there's anybody else. Oh, and Captain America's characters in the film, and kind of a little spoof. And Chris Evans reprises his role as Captain America. It's a pretty good film. It was fun. It kind of tied in the MCU universe, and it tied in the Captain America Civil War. It does take place 8 years, not physically, because Avengers came out 5 years ago, but the timeline takes place 8 years after the Avengers timeline. So it's set in 2020. It's a pretty good film. And like I said, it was a good film. It was a Marvel film. I enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. But to me, there's a couple of things I had issues with. Some of the characters that were in the comics were not in this film. You didn't have Mary Jane Watson. You didn't have Gwen Stacy. You didn't have Uncle Ben, and you didn't have Mr. Jameson, the editor of the newspaper. My favorite version. This is not my favorite version of Spider-Man. Spider-Man: Homecoming was good, but it's not my favorite version. Mine will always be the Sam Raimi 2002 through 2007 Spider-Man films with Tobey Maguire, Chris as Spider-Man Peter Parker, Vanessa Redgraves as Aunt May. Of course, he introduced the great William Dafoe as the Green Goblin. Alfred Molina as Dr. Ock. So the Sam Raimi versions with Tobey Maguire in that cast is always going to be my favorite. That is Spider-Man for me. That is what went by the comics. This one, Spider-Man: Homecoming, with Tom Holland, Robert Downey Jr., Marissa Tomei, and Michael Keaton, and Zendaya or whatever, and Chris Evans, to me, it felt like a new version of Spider-Man. I didn't really care for it as much because I am partial to the old school comics. Like I said, it was not a bad film. It had a lot of action, good storytelling, special effects. It tied into the Marvel universe perfectly, and that's not my problem. My problem is I'm used to the old school Spider-Man, and I felt like this one didn't do it justice like what I grew up with as a kid. And I felt like it was too teeny bopper for me. Like I said, it wasn't a bad film, but they didn't gear this film to the audience that grew up with the comic back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. They shot this film for the millennials, and that disappointed me because I felt like this film could have been so much better. And I wish they really would have introduced Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man to the MCU back in '08 when they did Iron Man and all that, when they started introducing the MCU universe, Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think it would have been better, you know. Like I said, it's not a bad film. It was enjoyable. It was good. It tied into the Marvel films. It was probably one of the better Marvel films that have come out in the last few years. But like I said, I'm just partial to the old school Spider-Man. So if you're wanting and thinking about seeing the old school Spider-Man film, and you're thinking that's what you're going to see when you see Spider-Man Homecoming, you're going to be disappointed. I'm just being honest. But it's a good film. It shows him fighting the Vulture. Michael Keaton does a great job as the Vulture. Tom Holland does a great job as Spider-Man. But I felt like there's some issues in the film. I feel like it didn't do justice to the old comics, and I felt like he came off as Iron Man's lackey in the film, and Spider-Man was his own man in the comics. I would definitely go see it because it does tie in a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe storylines, and it's worth going to see for that. But if you're used to the old school Spider-Man, be aware it's not going to be that. It's going to be a new version of Spider-Man in my view, and not, in my view, not as good as the old school Spider-Mans. I'm still partial to Sam Raimi and his version, but like I said, it's a good Marvel film. I give it 3.5 stars for that, and that is my view of. And like I said, it's a good storyline. Tom Holland's character, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is trying to defeat the Vulture, and it's good. Like I said, a good storyline, a lot of action. Michael Keaton and everybody does a good job in their roles, but to me, it's I don't like this version of Spider-Man as much as the old school version. But definitely check it out. It's a good Marvel film, 3.5 stars, and that's my review for Spider-Man: Homecoming.